October 14th, 1066. A hill 9 miles southeast of Hastings, England. Dawn breaks over Senlac Ridge. On the southern slope stands William of Normandy. 15,000 men, knights in chainmail, horses bred for war, archers with composite bows. Behind William floats the banner of Pope Alexander II. The Pope has blessed this invasion. William claims the English throne by right. He says the previous king promised him the crown. He says God supports his cause. On the northern slope stands Harold Godwinson, the King of England. 10,000 men. Most are farmers with spears. Some are housecarls, professional warriors with two-handed axes. They stand behind a wooden shield wall. They have just marched 250 miles from the north. 5 days earlier, they defeated another invasion at Stamford Bridge. Now they face a second enemy. Harold has not slept in 3 days. His army is exhausted, but he has chosen the perfect ground. The hill is steep. The Normans must charge uphill through mud. Any man who breaks the shield wall will die. William looks at the ridge. He knows he must attack. He cannot wait. His ships are vulnerable. His supply lines are thin. If Harold receives reinforcements, the Normans will be trapped. So William does the only thing he can do. He attacks. What happens in the next 9 hours will change England forever. The English language will be transformed. The monarchy will be reborn, and one arrow will kill a king. The story begins 9 months earlier. Edward the Confessor, King of England, died childless. He had named no successor. 3 men claimed the throne. The first was Harold Godwinson, Earl of Wessex, the most powerful noble in England. The Witan, the English council, chose him. He was crowned the day after Edward died. The second was Harald Hardrada, King of Norway, a legendary warrior, a poet, a killer. He claimed the throne by ancient Viking right. The third was William, Duke of Normandy. He said Edward had promised him the crown years earlier. He said Harold had sworn an oath to support his claim. Harold denied it. William called him a liar. William went to the Pope. He presented his case. The Pope was persuaded. Perhaps William promised church reforms. Perhaps the Pope wanted to bring England under Roman authority. Whatever the reason, the Pope gave William his banner. A holy war, a crusade in all but name. William spent months gathering an army. Knights from across France answered his call. They came for land, for gold, for glory. By September, William had 15,000 men and 700 ships. He waited for favorable winds. The winds did not come. Harold waited on the south coast. His militia could not stay indefinitely. Farmers had to harvest crops. By October, Harold's army had dispersed. He returned to London, and William sailed. The Norman fleet landed at Pevensey on September 28. William found an abandoned Roman fort. He made it his base. He ordered his men to build a wooden castle. Hastings became their headquarters. William waited. He knew Harold would come. He had to. The Normans were raiding the countryside, burning villages, stealing food. Harold could not allow this. He had to defend his kingdom. But Harold had a problem. In the north, his brother Tostig had allied with Harald Hardrada. They had invaded with 300 ships. Harold had to choose. defend the south and lose the north, or defend the north and leave the south open. He chose the north. He marched 250 miles in 9 days, impossible speed. On September 25, he attacked at Stamford Bridge. The battle was brutal. Harold Hardrada was killed. An arrow struck his throat. The Norse invasion ended. But Harold had no time to celebrate. 3 days later, a messenger arrived. William had landed. Harold turned his army around. He marched south, 250 miles back. He arrived in London on October 5. His men were exhausted. They had fought 1 battle. They had marched 500 miles. They needed rest. But Harold did not wait. He marched to Hastings immediately. Perhaps he was overconfident. Perhaps he feared William would reach London. Perhaps his advisers urged him to attack. Whatever the reason, Harold made a decision. He would fight on Senlac Ridge, and he would fight with half his army. The English army formed a shield wall on the ridge. Each man stood shoulder to shoulder. Their shields overlapped, a wooden fence of lime and oak. Behind them, the land sloped downward. If they broke, they would fall. There was no retreat. The housecarls stood in the front. These were professional warriors. They carried Dane axes, 5 feet of ash wood with a blade 18 inches long. The axe could split a shield. It could cleave a helmet. It could kill a horse with 1 swing. But the housecarls were few, perhaps 2,000. The rest were feared men, farmers, men with spears and knives, men who had never fought in a battle. They stood behind the housecarls. They would fill gaps. They would throw spears. They would fight if the line broke. Harold placed his banner at the center, the fighting man, a golden warrior on a blue field. His brothers Gyrth and Leofwine commanded the wings. The army stretched 700 yards across the ridge. William saw this. He arranged his army in 3 lines, archers in front, infantry behind, knights in the rear, the Bretons on the left, the Normans in the center, the French and Flemish on the right. William rode a Spanish war horse. He carried a relic around his neck, a piece of the true cross. He had preached to his men the night before. He told them they fought for God, for civilization, against oath-breakers. The English were barbarians. They deserved to be conquered. The Normans would bring order. They would bring the church. They would bring France. The battle began at 9 in the morning. William raised his hand. The trumpets sounded. The archers advanced. They loosed their first volley. The arrows rose into the sky. They fell on the English shields. They bounced off. The shield wall held. The archers fired again and again. The English did not move. They stood silent. Some arrows struck men in the face. They fell. The line closed behind them. William saw this. He ordered the infantry to attack. The Bretons charged uphill. They slipped in the mud. The English waited. When the Bretons were close enough, the housecarls swung their axes. The shields shattered. The helmets cracked. Men fell screaming. The Bretons broke. They ran down the hill. The English left wing pursued. They left the shield wall. They chased the fleeing Bretons. William saw his chance. He led his knights against the exposed men. The English were cut down. None survived. William raised his visor. He showed his face. His men thought he was dead. He shouted that he lived. He would lead them to victory. He rallied his knights. They charged again. The shield wall held. The battle continued for hours. Attack, repulse, attack, repulse. The dead piled up. The living slipped on blood. Then William tried something new. He ordered his archers to shoot high, not at the shields, above them. The arrows arced over the ridge. They fell behind the shield wall. They struck the feared men, men without armor. They screamed. They fell. The shield wall did not break, but men were dying. And then, perhaps by accident, perhaps by design, one arrow found its mark. Harold Godwinson, King of England, stood by his banner. An arrow struck his eye. He fell. The housecarls gathered around him. They fought to the death. Harold's brothers died beside him. The banner fell. The English army saw this. They panicked. They broke. The Normans poured through the gap. They killed without mercy. The feared men ran. The knights pursued them. They cut them down from behind. The battle became a slaughter. By sunset, 10,000 Englishmen lay dead. Harold's body was found. His face was destroyed. His wife Edith identified him by marks on his thigh. William had won, but he had not conquered England yet. He had to take London. He marched north. He burned towns along the way. He showed the English what resistance meant. By Christmas, the surviving nobles had submitted. William was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey. The last Anglo-Saxon king was dead. The Norman era had begun. The aftermath of Hastings changed everything. The English nobility was destroyed. Norman barons replaced them. They built castles across England, stone fortresses that dominated the countryside. They introduced feudalism. The king owned all land. He granted it to his barons. They granted it to their knights. The peasants worked the land. They were bound to it. The English language was transformed. French became the language of the court, of law, of power. English became the language of peasants, of farms, of animals. Cow, pig, sheep, these are English words. Beef, pork, mutton, these are French words. The peasants raised the animals. The nobles ate the meat. Even today, the English language carries the scars of Hastings. William ruled for 21 years. He crushed every rebellion. He burned the north. He killed thousands. He became known as William the Conqueror. But his victory was never secure. He spent his reign fighting rebels, fighting his own sons, fighting the Welsh, fighting the Scots, fighting the Danes. England was a prize that had to be constantly defended. When William died in 1087, his body was so bloated that it burst during burial. The conqueror's end was ignoble, but his legacy endured. The monarchy he established still rules today. The castles he built still stand. The language he transformed is spoken across the world. The lesson of Hastings is about timing. Harold won at Stamford Bridge, but he lost at Hastings. Why? Because he did not wait. He could have gathered more men. He could have rested his army. He could have let William's supplies run low. But he chose to fight immediately. Perhaps pride drove him, perhaps fear, Perhaps he had learned nothing from Stamford Bridge. Victory can be the precursor to defeat. Harold's army was the best in England, but they were tired. They were outnumbered. They were led by a king who would not wait. William, by contrast, was patient. He had waited months for favorable winds. He had waited for Harold to make a mistake. He had waited for the right moment to feign retreat. Patience is a weapon. Harold forgot this, and one arrow ended his reign. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories of kings and conquerors, of battles that changed the world, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a history. Next week, we will tell the story of Tours, the battle where Europe stopped an empire, where Charles Martel earned his name, and where the map of the world was redrawn. Thank you for watching.